Hi guys, welcome back to ladensercrochets. If you're new to the channel, you're welcome. My name is Liz. Kindly subscribe and join the family. In this tutorial, we're making a shrug. We're going to be using the granny stitch, the granny square pattern, and I've already done a granny square tutorial, and therefore I'm going to leave a link below so that you can click on it and watch the tutorial. I'm using these two yarns and they are chunky, but you can use a medium weight yarn. So I'll be using the chunky yarn, and for this I'll use a 5mm crochet hook. If you want to use a medium weight yarn like this one, I would advise that you go for a smaller hook, and when I'm working that, I'll be using the 3.5mm crochet hook. I'll be making more of these shrugs, but for this one, I'm using the chunky yarn. Then you're going to need a pair of scissors, stitch markers, darning needle. The measuring tape, not so much. You might not need it at all. So you're going to start by making your granny squares, and we're going to make the granny squares in 3 different sizes. So the first size will be the largest size. This is the largest size that you're going to make, and for this you're going to make 4 of them. And for this one I did a total of 6 rows. Then you're going to make medium size granny squares, and these ones are 10 in total, 5 in one color, 5 in the other color. So I made 10 of them, and for this one I did a total of 5 rows. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we have the small squares, and these ones are going to make 4 of them, and we're going to use to make 4 rows of the small ones. So we have 10, 4, and 4, and that is a total of 18 granny squares. So go on, make those granny squares, and then we're going to get to joining them. Right here I've already joined 3 of the squares, and these are the medium size squares, the squares that have 5 rows, and that is the back panel or the front panel. Then we're going to create another panel similar to that other one. Now because I have 2 colors, I'll just be arranging them like you can see, and then I'm going to get my yarn and the darning needle. Like I mentioned earlier in a previous video, you can join the granny squares however you feel is comfortable for you, or however you feel is okay for you. So I start from the corner of the 2 squares that I want to join first, then I tie a knot at the very end of those 2 squares. Then after tying the knot, I'll just start working stitch by stitch. So I'll move on to the first double crochet on one side and the first double crochet on the other side, and I'm working both loops, and I'll just sew them together into the second double crochet and the second double crochet on the other side. Just join them together. As you can see, I'm working over that end just to weave it in, the third double crochet and the third double crochet on the other side. Then we're going to join the corresponding stitches till we get to the corner. So just keep going till you get to the corner of your 2 squares, or to the corners of the 2 squares that you're joining. Once you get to the corner, you're going to join the 2 corners together, and you're going to put a knot at that corner. Then just tighten it at that point, and we're going to weave in the end that has remained. So because I'm using the gray, I'm going to weave it in on the gray side. So just go in between the stitches and weave that end in to secure it and to ensure that your work does not unravel. Once the end is well hidden, we're just going to cut off the remaining end or the remaining yarn. And two of the squares are joined, so we're going to join a third one next to the second one right there, and we're just going to join the same way we've done with the first two. So into the corners of the two squares, we're just going to put our darning needle through and then make a knot at that part where you've begun. Make sure that the knot is tight. So I'm going to knot once. Actually, I'm going to knot twice. So one, and then I put a second knot just to secure that part, and then I'm just going to join stitch by stitch till I get to the next corner. So let me do that and I'll meet you at the end. I have the three squares joined, and together with the other connection we have the front and the back panel of the shrug. So now we need to attach the other squares in order to get the sleeves. So before I come to joining everything together, I'll first join the sleeves. So to do that, you're going to get one of the large squares. So for the sleeve part, we begin with one large square on one side. So we're going to have that large square on this side, and we're going to have the other large square on the other side, on both panels, that is. So we're going to have two large squares on either side of each of the two of our panels. Then after the large square, we're going to get a medium size square, and then after that a small square. So I'm first going to show you how to join the large square, and you want to make sure that when you're joining, you're on the wrong side of your squares, and make sure that you're joining from, you're holding your work the same exact way I'm holding mine, with the large square on this side and the other squares on the other side. So now we're going to get the darning needle, and we're going to get yarn and put it through. Then after that we start connecting. As you can see, the stitches on the large square are more than the stitches on the smaller square, and that is why you need to hold your work like this so that reducing the stitches becomes easy. Let's begin at the corner of the two squares, and we're going to make a knot just like we've been doing with the other square. So make the two knots, make sure that it's tight enough, and then we're going to start with the first stitch on the large square, the first double crochet and the first double crochet on the other side, join them together. Then on the large square we're going to go to the second stitch, but then we go back into the first stitch of the small square. So it's like we are reducing one stitch on the large square, so that the stitches can correspond well. Then on the third double crochet, we connect it with the second double crochet on the small square. So the first with the first, the second with the first, the third with the second, then the fourth with the second again. So I hope you've gotten that. The first with the first, the second with the first, the third with the second, and the fourth with the second. Now count 4 double crochets on the other side and mark. So I'll just get my stitch marker and mark the 4th stitch on the large square from the other side. So we've already done a reduction on this side. We're going to do the other reduction on the other side. Now from this point till we get to the stitch marker, we're just going to join each of the double crochets that correspond each other. We're not reducing anymore. So 1 double crochet with 1 double crochet on the other side. Keep going till you get to the stitch marker, and I'll meet you there. I'm at the stitch marker and I'm just going to remove it. At this point we should have 4 stitches remaining on the large square, 2 stitches on the small square. So we're going to go onto 1 stitch on this side and the stitch on the other side. Then we're going to go onto the next stitch, but then we go back into the stitch that we've previously worked on the small square, then onto the stitch that follows and the last stitch on the smaller square. Then finally we have the last stitch on the large square goes to the last stitch on the smaller square, and now we get to the corner, and at the corner we're just going to connect the 2 corners, then tie a knot and weave in the remaining end. So just make the knot, then after that you're going to weave in. So now right here I have that one large square attached on one side of the panel. Then I'm going to get the other large square and attach it on the other side. Now you've already seen how we are doing this. You need to make sure that when you're attaching, you're holding your work such that the large square is facing you. I hope that makes sense. You want to make sure that you're able to know the square in which you're reducing the stitches. Then you're going to get your yarn and connect. Make sure that you reduce at the beginning and also at the end. I'll do that connection, then come back. I have that second square in place, the second large square on the other side of the panel. Now the next square that is going to follow that large square is a smaller one. Not the smaller one, but the medium size, the one with the 5 rows. So I'm going to have it next to the large square, and then after this one I'm going to have the smallest one, the smallest. So we're going to have 3 medium at the middle, then followed by the large one, the medium, and the small one. And we're going to do this on this side, then we're going to do the same exact thing on the other side. Begin at the corners, make a knot, the 2 knots that is. Then because we are moving from a large square to a medium size, we're going to need to do a reduction. So I'm counting my 4 stitches from the side where I'm going to end. Just mark that point so that we know where we're going to work the reduction. Then we're going to begin in the first double crochet and the first double crochet on the other square, then the second double crochet with the first double crochet, the second with the first, then the third with the second, then we're going to have the fourth goes back to the second. So we've done the 2 reductions on this end, and then we'll do the other reductions on the other end. So now we're just going to attach 1 double crochet with 1 double crochet till we get to the stitch marker. We're going to remove the stitch marker when we get to it, and then we're going to do the last 2 reductions. That is, we have 2 stitches on this on 4 stitches on this side, 2 stitches on the other side. So we're going to have 2 double crochets going into one of the double crochets, then the remaining 2 double crochets will go to the last double crochet of the medium size square. So just like that. Then we're going to have our knot at the corner, and then we weave in the end. So I'll go on connect the the smaller square after weaving in this end. Then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Then I'll come back once I have all the squares connected. I'm done connecting the smallest of the squares. So we have this other side which is not complete. As you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, then the large, the medium, the small. Then on the other side we should have the large, the medium, and the small. So we have the medium and the small one. So I'm supposed to connect these just the same exact way I've connected the others, and then I'll come back. Right here I'm done connecting all the squares, and in total I have 9 squares. So we have small, we have medium, large, then we have 1, 2, and 3 medium, then we have large, medium, large, medium, and small. So you're supposed to have 2 panels like this, exactly the same way. So let me go on, connect the other, and then I'm going to show you how to join the two to complete the shrug. I've already joined the other granny squares and I have the 2 similar panels. So now we're going to join them, and you want to make sure that you're joining on the wrong side. So you place in your first panel such that you have the wrong side at the bottom and the other wrong side on top. And now this is the sleeve part of the shrug, and we're going to join it till we get to the neckline, or to the shoulders, that is. So just arrange your work like this, and you're going to get stitch markers and mark. Count 3 squares and mark on top. Then we're also going to do the same thing at the bottom. We're counting 3 squares from one of the sides and then mark. Now let me just join one of the sides and then I'll come back once I've joined one side so that we can join the other one. Right here I've already done one of the sleeves, and as you can see, for the upper part I've joined for 4 squares, lower part 3 squares. So now you need to do the same thing on the opposite side. I'm just marking the point where I should join up to or from. This is the upper part of the shrug, and you just want to leave a neckline in the middle, and I've left 1 square. Then at the bottom we are joining from the 3rd square. I'll show you. Let me just mark and then I'll show you how it looks like. I'm just aligning the squares and marking. You can work without the stitch markers because you're using squares. So at the bottom you're going to have the 3 squares left open. Then on the other edge we have the sleeve part, and we're going to join from the wrist of the sleeve, and we're going to join for 3 squares. That is for the small square, the medium size, and the large square. This is the bottom part of the shrug. So you're just going to join stitch by stitch. These are they are the same number of stitches, so you're just going to join 1 double crochet with 1 double crochet on the other side, and you're just going to continue for 3 squares. Right here I'm coming to the end of the third square, and I'm just joining those corresponding double crochets. When I get to the corners of the first two squares, I'm going to join them with a knot. Then I'm going to go on to the next corner, that is our last corner, and do a knot, and then just weave in that end that has remained. So because I'm using the gray, I'm weaving it in on a square that is gray. So we just hide in that end, and then after that we'll just cut off the yarn and we'll be done with the connection at the bottom part of the shrug. So now we get the pair of scissors and cut off the yarn. I've already weaved in that other one, so I'll just cut it off, and this is what we have now at the bottom part. I'm weaving in my ends as I go, so that by the end I'll not have so many of these yarns hanging around on my project. So let me just weave these in before we go on to the next connection. Now this is my work after the connection, and now we're going to connect at the top, and at the top we're connecting for 4 squares. We are counting the squares from the wrist side, so 5 squares, 4, that is, not 5, 4 squares, so that in the middle we're only leaving 1 square open, which will act as our neckline. If you feel like that neckline is too small, then you can always push it on either of the sides of your shrug. So I'm going to connect from this point, starting with the knot, then I'll connect for the 4 squares, 1 double crochet connected with a corresponding double crochet on the other side. So now just connect. This is quite easy, you already know how to do the connection. So let me do that and meet you at the end. I'm connecting the last 2 double crochets, then I'll connect the 2 corners, make the knot, and you know the drill. At this point we're just going to weave in the end. I have all the connections done, and this is our work at this point, and that's my neckline. You can always expand the neckline. Now turn the work to the right side. Because we've been joining from the wrong side, you need to turn it to the right side so that we can do a little bit of an edging to make it neater and to make it fit better. So this is our neckline. Like I've mentioned, if it's smaller, you can expand it, you can make it larger. Then at the bottom part we have the 3 squares, that part left open. We are going to do an edging on the neckline, and we're going to start from one of the corners. Just insert your hook there and pull up a loop to slip stitch. Then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do a single crochet edging. So we're just going to start by chaining 1, chain 1, go back into that gap with a single crochet. Then into the next gap we're going to do a single crochet. In between the double crochets, a double crochet, then a double crochet in between the next 2 double crochets, another double crochet in between the next 2 double crochets. So we're just going to do 1 single crochet in between the double crochets, and we're going to work all the way around the neckline. I'm coming to the end, and I'm just lacing my single crochets and the last single crochet into that last gap. Then we're going to slip stitch on top of the first single crochet that we did, then chain 1 and cut off the yarn. Then we're going to pull it through and fasten, and then just weave in that end. Then after we weave in the end, we're going to do an edging at the bottom, a ribbing actually at the bottom part. The neckline is done, so let's go to the bottom part, and we're just going to get the corner, and we're going to work all the way around that bottom part. It's too wide, and that's why I'm working the ribbing. Insert your hook at the corner, and then grab the yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're just going to pull through right there, and we're going to make a chain. So pull the yarn through, and from this point we're going to chain 10, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10. Once we have the 10 chains, I'm just working my 10th chain right here. We're going to work a slip stitch into the 9th chain. Pull up a loop and pull through. Then we're going to work 1 slip stitch into each of the next 8 stitches. So in total we're going to have 9 slip stitches. I'm in the 9th slip stitch, and that is the last slip stitch that you're working on that row. Then we're going to go onto the next gap and slip stitch 1, then slip stitch for the second time, and then turn. When we turn, we're going to skip the 2 slip stitches that we've done, and we're going to begin on the 9th slip stitch that we did on the row. So right there you want to do a slip stitch, just go into the back loop of the stitch. Then we're going to work in the back loops for a total of 8 stitches. So this is the second, then we're going to have the third, then the fourth back loop. We're going to have a fifth slip stitch into the back loop, then keep going until you have 1 stitch remaining. I'm struggling with the slip stitches here. If you feel like the slip stitches are a bit too hard, you can use single crochets but then use a smaller hook. So once you have 1 stitch remaining, we're going to work into the both loops, both the front and the back loop. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. We're going to work row 3 in the back loops, beginning with the first back loop right there. So we're going to work a total of 9 slip stitches till you get to the main part of the shrug. So just work your 9 slip stitches. When you get to the end, you should make sure that you mark that stitch, because that is where you're going to begin. So this will be our first stitch in the next row. Then slip stitch in between the double crochet and another slip stitch in between the next 2 double crochets, then turn. So remember, when you get to the main part, you slip stitch twice. Begin on this stitch in the back loop. Sorry, so let me show you where the back loop is. So right there, do a slip stitch, and we're going to do 1 slip stitch into every stitch till we have 1 stitch remaining. This is our row 4, and at the end of each of the even rows, we're going to work both loops. Just work, and then when you get to the end, work the 2 loops. The reason why we're working 2 loops on this end is so that we can have neat stitches. Chain 1 and turn. This is row 5, which is an odd row, and all the odd rows will have stitches in the back loops, all of them. So we're just going to work the 9 slip stitches in the back loops till we get to the end of the row. Be careful not to miss any stitch. When you get to the end, we're going to work in between the next 2 double crochets and in between the other 2. You're slip stitching twice and then turn in. When you turn, make sure you begin from that stitch in the back loop and work till you have 1 stitch remaining. And then when you only have 1 stitch remaining, you're just going to work in the both loops of that stitch. So 2 loops, chain 1 and turn, and this is row 7, I think. And in row 7, each stitch is worked in the back loop. So keep in mind that the odd rows will all be worked in the back loops, but in the even rows, the last stitch is worked into both loops, just to make sure that our work is neat. And we're just going to work like this until we've gone all the way around that bottom part of our shrug. So keep going and I'll meet you at the end. So we want to work all the way around that bottom part till we come to that point, and I'll meet you there. As you can see, I've already worked all the way around and I just have a few rows remaining. So I'll just complete those rows till I have no stitch remaining, and then I'm going to show you how to connect the 2 ends in order to have a complete round. So let me keep going and finish up the rows that are remaining. This is going to be my last row. As you can see, I only have 2 stitches remaining right there, and the second one where I've done the 2 slip stitches, then I'll turn and do the 9 back loop slip stitches, that is 8 of them. Then in the last one I'll do the slip stitch into the both loops. So I'm working towards the end of the last row, and right there you want to ensure that you work in the both loops, chain 1. Then we're going to cut off the yarn and leave a long end that we're going to use to connect to complete the round. Then pull through and fasten, and you're going to turn your work to the wrong side just like this, and then we get the darning needle and we're going to use it to make the connection. We go into the back loop of the first stitch. You can work in the both loops, actually, it doesn't matter. Then we're just going to sew the stitches together. So the first and the second, the second and the second, that is the first and the first, the second and the second, till we get the 9 stitches. So just keep going, connecting your corresponding stitches, and yeah, so keep going. I'm working back loop on this side, then both loops on the other side, and this is simple. It shouldn't be a problem. So I'm just getting to the last stitch, and I'm going to close up that gap that we have right there, and finally I'll do a knot. This is what we have from the other side. So make a knot at that point and then weave in the end. Now this is what we have at the end, and the only thing that is remaining is to do an edging on the sleeve, and I'm going to do an edging on the sleeve similar to what I've done on the neckline. I wanted to do a ribbon at that point, but I've run out of yarn, so instead I'll do the single crochet ribbon, the single crochet edging, because it looks neat and it's okay. It doesn't really need the edging, the ribbon that is, but if you can do the ribbon, then well and good. So get your yarn and the hook, and then we're going to get one of the corners and reconnect the yarn there. You can connect from either of the two. So grab your yarn, slip stitch, chain 1, back into that stitch with a single crochet. Then we're going to work over the short end just to weave it in. Then working between the double crochets, 1 single crochet into each of the spaces between the double crochets, and we're going to work all the way around the sleeve, and we're going to do the same thing with the other sleeve. So I'll do that at the end. I'll just do the slip knot in the first single crochet, and then just cut off the yarn and weave it. So let me do that and I'll be done. I'm coming to the end of that edging, just placing my single crochets in between the double crochets. Then I'm going to place one into that corner, then do the slip stitch into the first one, chain 1, cut off the yarn and weave it in. I'll do the same thing on the other sleeve. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the tutorial. If you've enjoyed the tutorial, kindly leave a like, a comment, share and subscribe if you're not subscribed. And if you've enjoyed the tutorial and would like to leave a special gift, click on the thanks button and I'll appreciate you a lot. When you get to recreate this, kindly tag me on Instagram and I'll be reposting your work. See you in the next one.